Alright guys, today we are completing our series of even and odd functions. Today we are focusing on equations. This is the last part 3 of even and odd functions. Let's start with a little review first. So for example, if I have negative x raised to the second power, the goal is to determine whether it's negative or positive answer. So negative x to the second power is the same as negative x times negative x. We know that negative times negative gives me positive, okay? And then x times x is x squared. So basically, when you raise negative x to the even exponent, you will always end up with positive x. So even exponent, we're ending up with positive answer, okay? Same if you have negative x to the 18th power. Well, it's going to be negative x times negative x times negative x 18 times, but, you know, instead of just rewriting this 18 times, we can just pay attention to the exponent. 18, it's even a number. And if you're raising a negative x to even a number, you're going to get positive x. So x to 18th. Okay? Now let's look at odd exponents. So let's say I have negative x to the third power. Well, it's the same as negative x times negative x times negative x. Well, negative times negative is positive x squared, and then x squared times negative x, positive times negative is negative, and then x squared times x is x cubed. Well, in summary, whenever you're raising negative x to odd exponent, you will always end up with a negative x. So this is odd exponent, and you're going to end up with a negative answer. So now if I want to raise negative x to the power 27, well, I just want to pay attention to the power. Power is odd number, right? 27 is an odd number. That means I'm going to end up with negative x to the 27th. Okay, so that's a little review before we actually talk about even and odd functions. So now let's look at number 1. Okay, we're gonna look at even function first. Even function. Now, here's your example. F of x equals 2 minus 7x squared. Okay, I want you to start with a table. Okay, so we're gonna make a table. Now, and this table will always look the same, okay? So at the first, right here, at the first space, we're gonna write f of x. Next one, f of negative x. And then the last one, negative f of x. Please always keep the same order, okay? Now, if the first two, okay, if whatever you get here and whatever you get here, if these first two spaces are the same, we're getting even function. Okay, now if you get the middle row and the last row the same, we get odd function. Okay, so let's go ahead and fill in the table. Now we know what's f of x. F of x is given, is 2 minus 7x squared. Okay. Next, we need to calculate what's f of negative x, which means every x that you see in the original function, you're going to replace with negative x. Okay. In this case, I only see one x, but I can have 10 x's. I can have as many x's as, the function has. So every single x that you see, you're going to substitute x with negative x. So f of negative x, 2 stays the same, then the negative 7 stays the same, and then my x becomes negative x, and then I have to the second power, okay? Now we're going to simplify this. Okay, so I get 2, nothing changes, 7, nothing changes. Please, just do not subtract 2 minus 7, okay? We're following PEMDAS here. You gotta do exponents, then multiplication, and then you're gonna subtract. Now, negative x to the second power is even. When we're dealing with even exponents, we're getting positive answer, okay? So negative x squared is the same as x squared. Now, we can't simplify this anymore. These are not like terms, and this is my answer that I'm going to put in this table. So I get 2 minus 7x squared. Okay, as you can see, my 2 are both the same. The second term, negative 7x squared, and it's the same in the second row, negative 7x squared. They're both the same, which means this function is even function. Okay, but just to be sure, I'm also going to double check for the odd function. So now I'm going to have negative f of x, which means I'm going to put negative in front of the whole function, okay, original function. So I put negative, and then I'll put the original function in parentheses. So I get 2 minus 7x squared. Well, when you have negative in front of parentheses, all you have to do is distribute that negative, okay? It's the same as negative 1. So I'm going to distribute negative, which means, all you're going to do is switch all the signs. So negative 1 times 2 is negative 2. Negative 1 times negative 7x squared is positive 7x squared, okay? And that's my answer. So then I'm going to put this in my last row. Negative 2 plus 7x squared. So hopefully you can see that the middle row and the last row are not the same. They're actually opposite. So this is not an odd function. That means it's an even function. So it is even function because f of x equals f of negative x, okay? So f of x equals negative x. Now this notation is really important, okay? So whenever f of x and f of negative x give you the same result, that means the function is even. All right, let's go ahead, take a look at number 2. Now I'm going to give you an example of an odd function. So number 2, we're looking at odd function. Okay, so here's your original function. F of x equals 5x to the 7th power minus 9x to the 5th power. Okay, we're going to start with the table. Okay, so I have f of x. Next, I have f of negative x. And lastly, I have negative f of x. Okay, now if these two are the same, we have even function. If these two are the same, we have odd function. Okay, so we know what's f of x, it's given. So I'm just going to rewrite this. 5x to the 7th minus 9x to the 5th. All right, next we're looking at f of negative x. So f of negative x, negative, equals, I'm replacing every single x that you see with negative x. So 5, then I'll put parentheses negative x to the 7th power, minus 9, parentheses negative x in in a 5th power. Okay, so I'm not gonna skip any steps here, okay? I'll kind of like trying to do this step by step, pretty slow. I rewrite 5. Now, negative x to the odd power will give you negative, okay? So I will put this negative x to the 7th. So in the first step, the power was outside. When I simplify this, I just basically drop the power inside of the parentheses. Okay, and then I get negative 9, and I have negative x to the 5th power. Number 5 is an odd number. That means I get negative. So negative x to the 5th power. Now, this right here, it's the same as 5 times negative x to the 7th. All I'm going to do, I'm going to basically put this minus in front of the 5, right? Because 5 times negative x to the 7 is negative 5 x to the 7th. Now here, negative 9 times negative x to the 5th is positive 9x to the 5th. Okay, so that's my answer for f of negative x. So I get negative 5x to the 7th plus 9x to the 5th. Okay, as you can see, these two are not the same. Okay, one is positive, one is negative, same thing here. So this is not an even function. So now let's go ahead and take a look if this is an odd function. So I get negative f of x. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put all this original function inside of the parentheses and put minus in front. So negative, and then I get 5x to the 7th minus 9x to the 5th. Okay, when you distribute the negative, all it's gonna happen, all the signs inside of the parentheses will change. Okay, so if you distribute this, you get negative 5x to the 7th. Negative times negative 9x to the 5th is positive 9x to the 5th. And that's my answer. So I get negative 5x to the 7th plus 9x to the 5th. Okay, and then I'm going to compare. Is the middle and last row the same? And they are. Negative 5s are negatives. Wait, what? Both. I mean, both. The first term is negative, second term is positive. So this is an odd function because f of negative x equals negative f of x. Okay, and then last example, we're going to deal with neither. Okay, function is not even and it's not odd. What color? Blue. All right, number 3. Number 3, neither. Here we go. All right, function that we are looking at is f of x equals negative 3x plus 1. Okay, same thing, table. I get f of x, I get f of negative x, and negative f of x. Okay, if the two first rows are the same, we have even. If the bottom two rows are the same, we have odd. Okay, so f of x is negative 3x plus 1. Now f of negative x. We're going to replace every x with negative x. So in this case, we only have one x. So I get negative 3, parentheses, negative x, plus 1. Well, negative x to the first power is just negative x, right? So I can simplify this. Negative 3 times negative x, well, negative times negative is positive 3x, and then plus 1. So I get 3x plus 1. Okay, hopefully you can see first terms are not the same. Here, first term is negative. Here, first term is negative. Second terms are the same, but that's, I mean, the whole thing has to be the same. That means it's not an even function. Next, I will look at negative f of x, which means I'm just putting parentheses and negative in front of the whole function. So I get negative 3x plus 1. Okay? And then when you distribute this negative, Negative times negative gives you positive 3x. Negative times positive 1 is negative 1. Okay, so that's my answer. So I get 3x minus 1. Okay, hopefully also you can see first term, yes, they're the same, but second terms are not the same. That means it's not an odd function, which then leaves us with neither. Neither function, because f of x is not equal to f of negative x. F of x is not equal to f of negative x, and f of negative x is not equal to negative f of x. So f of negative x is not equal to negative f of x. All right, that's it for even and odd functions. Today I'm going to teach you another Polish word. I'm going to teach you how to say sun, because it's a pretty sunny day. In Polish we say słońce. Okay, słońce. So today I see a lot of słońce outside.